Welcome, everyone. Good evening. My name is Niki Lopez of Niki Lopez Creative, and you're watching The Circle, where every Tuesday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm sharing stories of the creative community, activists, social entrepreneurs, people doing great things in the world today. And I have a very special guest and friend, Chire Regans, also known as VantaBlack. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, boo.
Absolutely. And so Chire Regans was your artist name is VantaBlack, right?
Yes.
Yes. So is a visual artist, a mother, and community advocate. And so I'm going to pull a couple things from the bio. Chire Regans was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and lived there until her family relocated to Miami in the late 1980s. With the emergence of Black Lives Matter movement, pushed Chire's artwork in the direction of social awareness and change. Chire serves at the Community Relations Board Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement Committee and works as a teaching artist at the Perez Art Museum. Chire is a proud mother, visual artist, and truth teller and community advocate. Welcome, welcome. That is a lot.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
absolutely. So let's kind of get into it because we got a lot. You do so much in the community. I'm so grateful to have you on. And let's kind of get into it because I know at some point when you move into Miami, you started to get into art.
Yeah. So I tell people I was born an artist and I've always had an affinity for art. And those abilities that I had started to be more recognized and guided when I moved here to Miami in the 80s. And I went to elementary school and I had an art teacher who was a woman of color who saw something in me, and she guided me on that path to nurture that ability. So I ended up going to junior high school, and I was in a visual and performing arts program. And then I was in a visual and performing arts program in high school. And after that, immediately after I graduated from high school, I went to study scientific illustration at the University of Michigan. And then I came home on a break. I got really, really sick, and I took some time off, and I started to work in the arts. I actually worked at an art store. And then I slowly got back into the art world. And then I went to college at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, go Rattlers. And I got my bachelor's degree from FAMU. And then I moved back down here and really immersed myself into the arts community and bonded with artists here and started to create, exhibit, and now I'm here. So my work really shifted because all throughout college, you know, I was in an environment where your voice was encouraged, especially your Black voice, because it's an HBCU. So I was always vocal via my craft. So when I moved here, when I came back down here, there were some things that happened in my life that really honed the topics that I wanted to address. The first thing that happened was I became a mother. Mm-hmm. And there was more of a sense of urgency in my work, because you know how that is. Shit changed when you become a mama. And then I started to focus more on being more intentional in my work, right? Mm-hmm. So in 2016, there was a baby. His name was King Carter. He was shot and killed. And I remember feeling hopeless, helpless, anxious, all these things. And I asked myself, what are you going to do about it? So the immediate response is you create, you talk about what's happening in your work. So that's what I did. So I started the Memorial Portrait Project in 2016 with one portrait of one victim of gun violence. And here in 2020, unfortunately, that series has grown to over 200 portraits of victims and those stories of their lives.
Mm. Wow.
So.
And I'm just going to take a moment to acknowledge we're live on Niki Lopez Creative as well as Outclick Magazine and YouTube. And we have a few people alive. We have G Online saying greetings. So if you're joining us, please remember to, help us by sharing this, tagging people and to join into the conversation. So
Mhm.
what was that like, for you? Because I know like part of the reason why you left from your Missouri was the crime, and then to come down here and then to see things happening that actually impacted your artwork. How was that
Mhm.
like?
Well, you know, seeing things happen in St. Louis was one thing, but then having something happen to me here in Miami was completely different. My first experience with gun violence personally was when I was maybe I was like 16, 17, and I lost somebody very dear to me to gun violence. And it was the first funeral I had ever attended. His name was James Reed III.
Mhm.
And we met at New World, and he was a dancer, and we became really close friends. And I honored him and appreciated him. So to hear that he became a victim, it really, really affected me. And now that I reflect back on it, I
Mhm.
wasn't equipped to deal with that trauma, that loss, that grief at that time. It's something that I'm still processing. So I take that and also put that into this work because, you know, a victim is more than just a victim. There are people that love that person. Everyone that loved this person in turn becomes the victim. So those memories and just the idea of this person, I try to honor that in my work, you know, and this idea of Black death, violence, and police brutality, because then I started to tell stories of victims of police brutality. And I started to see that this is the same type of pain inflicted on the community. It's just done by, a body of people that are supposed to serve and protect. So there's that much more gravity when it comes to when law enforcement takes a life. And
Mhm.
um, I'm really appreciative that this is a dialogue now. We're talking about what happened to George Floyd and other victims of police brutality. We're being critical of law enforcement and those enablers of law enforcement. And there are people that don't look like us entering the dialogue
Mhm.
because we've been talking about this for decades.
Mhm.
Welcome to the dialogue, non-Black people and people of color. So, you know, I appreciate what's happening now. I never thought that I would see the shit that's happening across the globe. I never would have imagined it.
Mhm.
All of these voices raised in support of Black life, and being critical of an institution like law enforcement.
Mhm.
People don't want to go there. They don't want to talk about the shit that the police do, you
Mhm.
know, and we don't have to. We always have the understanding that okay, it's some cops that don't do that shit. That don't beat the shit out of Black people and don't shoot them to death. Those are not the people that we're talking about because they're in the minority. We're talking about people that do
Mhm.
because they have protections in place that diminish and completely eliminate accountability. So now is the reckoning. We're about to hold everybody accountable, and then police brutality aided by systemic racism, you
Mhm.
know, and then not only are law enforcement officers being held held to task, but institutions,
Mhm.
schools, these companies that get our dollars and just want to celebrate the idea of Black, but you don't want our Black ass pain. So they're being held to task. These institutions that profit from what Black people create, you exploit what Black people create. You all are being held to task, and this is a reckoning, and I'm here for it. I'm glad I'm glad that this is something that I can witness and tell my kids about later.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just because some of us have been doing this type of work for a little while now, and
Mm-hmm.
now that people are getting on board, what is that like to you to see, whether it's non-black allies or other black people who may not want to have addressed police brutality and these senseless killings? Like, what is that like to you know so like, do y'all hear me? I've been saying this all this time.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to the dialogue.
Yeah.
So what I do appreciate is people that I hold dear to me that are not black. They don't consider themselves people of color. The white folks. I do appreciate the people who are genuinely standing by me and other people that look like me as allies. I appreciate what they've said to me because I haven't been asked, oh, can you explain racism to me? Oh, what do I do? They know not to come at me with that.
Mm-hmm.
What they're saying is, I hear you. How can I support you? And I'm standing in solidarity with you. That's what we need to hear. Now, the next thing that they need to do is go talk to their friends. Go talk to your racist ass friends that have been denigrating and holding up this institution. Also, go have that dialogue with them because black people, we know, we live and walk in trauma every single day, right? You as a sister, before you enter into a space, don't you give yourself that talk? Even when you wake up in the morning, don't you give yourself that talk? Lord, please don't let me have to slap somebody today or go off the day. Please don't make me lose my job today. We all have that mantra. So you got to arm yourself, prepare yourself just for everything that you're going to encounter in the day, right? And then there's a double layer being a black woman. There's extra weight and baggage on top of us, right? Because in spaces where there aren't a lot of us, we are looked to as the voice of the black people, and the voice of ourselves. So all these institutions that have been perpetuating this bullshit in the workplace, I'm totally here for y'all getting called out. Let's see, popcorn, beer.
Okay. And so just to talk about, because you talked about, there's some people that are uncomfortable talking about police brutality, or they try to really kind of victim shame, like they want to dirty up why was someone being arrested in the first place, or how do you make someone understand, like, if there's someone who is white that could shoot up a school, that could have mental illness, to do all these things, and they're able to be detained peacefully, but when it comes to someone of color, that we don't have that same experience. How do you share that with someone who feels, I don't see color? It's not about
that.
Yeah.
When people say that, I don't see color. Yes, you do. So, or you need to look harder. So, right, people who try to victim shame and say, well, why were the police interacting with them in the first place? See, that is, you're perpetuating that idea of weaponized blackness, weaponized melanin, and you're also introducing the fucked up idea of respectability. So if I do this and I don't do that, the police won't shoot me down. But we know that that's not true. I appreciate that people are seeing that black folks are treated differently, because it's one thing for me to tell you, every time I get in my car, I worry about whether or not I'm coming home. Every time I see the police go this way, I'm looking in my mirror to see if they go bust a you, right? Because that's a real fear that we have as black people. White people don't have that. So for them, it's unfortunate that there is documented black death that people have to consume to understand what's happening to us. You and I have talked about it many times about, we don't have to consume, displays of black death. We know it happens, right? But apparently people had to see this man in the last moments of his life to understand what happened to him was unjust. And there's a long list of victims who've had the same thing happen to them, just minding their own damn business, you know?
And then, so, and just to spend a little bit more time, because there's some people who feel like there's an apprehension behind standing behind Black Lives Matter. There is a movement, there's an organization called Black Lives Matter. And sometimes what I've seen, and I don't know if you've experienced it, where some people say, well, you know, they want to defund the police. So what does that mean? Why is that, you know, like, is that a term that really means something? Or what's that fair to say, well, you know, we're not saying get rid of the police. Like, how do you explain that?
So the idea of defund the police, right? There are two main views of that idea, right? There are people that believe that to reduce incidences of police brutality, we have to reduce the resources that police have, right? Because there are police departments in this country that have more than $1 billion budget, right? But if you look at education in that same municipality, teachers have to buy their own supplies. You got 40 kids in the classroom, and kids don't have access to the resources they need in the classroom, right? So defunding the police takes those funds from them and disperses it to other resources in a community to address an entire problem, right? Because it's proven that more police in an area doesn't decrease crime, right? Now, on the opposite side of the idea to defund the police, they think, oh, yeah, we should do all that. And the result is the police department is disbanded. It goes away. It doesn't exist anymore. It's more of an extreme, seemingly radical idea, but you have people that are on this side, that side, and people in the middle because they don't really know where they fit, right? So it's important to have this dialogue because defund the police doesn't mean one broad thing, right? Some people want to take it each way. So it's important to understand what that means and what it means to you in your area, right? Because I was reading an article by GQ today, and they were saying that NYPD, their budget is upwards of $5 billion. They have the largest budget in the country. Why does a police department need $5 billion? You got all the tanks, you got all the weapons. What the hell you need? Now, take some of that money, take 50% of that shit, and distribute it throughout New York City. Mental health for kids, counselors in school, take the police out of schools, you know, so that you can address one issue in a multitude of ways, right? Because I feel like police should not be armed for war on the streets. Police should not be responding to peaceful protests in riot gear that they would use in the military, because that agitates a situation. You know, if you have a group of people and they're talking about something important to them, and they're like, you're supposed to serve and protect, but it looks like you're protecting buildings and cars and shit. So, and you're ready to attack us. You're shooting people with gas. Do you know people have died from this gas?
Yeah.
People have died from these rubber bullets. People have been severely damaged by, these rubber bullets. Those types of weapons do not belong on the street. That's how I feel.
And we have Bobby having a good point. Tear gas is banned on the battlefield.
Exactly. Exactly. Isn't that like a war crime to use gas? You know, why is it a war crime in war, but not a crime against a community you're supposed to protect? You know, and then if you're using these weapons against people, what the fuck you expect them to do? Of course they're gonna tear some shit up. Of course they're gonna burn some shit down. Of course they're gonna attack you back. It's a natural response, right? And then another point is they don't respond to the same groups of people like this. When these people all throughout Florida were protesting because they had to wear a mask to protect other people from the coronavirus, they was up in arms. They wanted to go to the beach. They want to get on their boats. They want to go work out at the gym, and they were protesting. And the police did not show up in riot gear. You know, and we can see that because it just happened. You know?
How do you define systematic or institutionalized racism as it pertains to institutions and organizations, or, you know, even in the art world? How does that show up for you as an artist, as an educator, as a Black woman? How do you define that, and how does it show up?
And it shows up in all those ways. Shows up in all those ways. So in the art world, you have, you know, Black art is coveted. It is something that people, especially Black art dealing with Black issues, right? People want to consume that work and not compensate the artist for producing that work and not honoring what it requires to produce that work. Then you take that work and put it in a place that's inaccessible to people that look like the people in the work, right? Then you have you know, it happens in higher education too. You have an institution where the people that make the decisions governing that institution don't represent the people affected by those decisions. If you have an institution in a neighborhood full of Black and brown people, the people making decisions at that institution should be Black and brown people. If you have an institution in an area where you're getting dollars just to occupy that space, you need to put that money back into the community, right? And it's like a lot of times, you know, these institutions will operate in spaces and not even engage with the community. They go outside to bring people in to consume what's created by people that look like the people in the community, you know? And it's the same model across the institution, right? And then me being an educator, right? In most education departments at any institution, what do the people look like? Most of them are Black and brown and women, right? Then when it comes time to cut funding, where do they chop from first? Education, right? So all of these things are motivated by systemic racism, you know, and they carry on across disciplines, you know, whether you work in law enforcement, healthcare, education, all of that. It's all reinforced.
And I'm just going to take a few moments. We have Lonnie saying hello. We have Bobby online, Victoria, Melanie, Colette, Jasmine, Mark. Thank you for being here. We have G saying yes, all of your points, Chire.
Thank you, G. What up, G? What up?
You know, I think it's I saw a meme a couple weeks back where people were talking about, you know, of course you have the people who are, there's three groups of people. There's the protesters, there's the rioters, and the looters. And people are condemning the looters, and I'm not reinforcing that, you know, but the thing is, all these major galleries in Europe,
y'all looting art.
From Africa, from Egypt.
Yes. You know, and they as need to be held accountable too. You know, don't put this, and this is the thing. You can't expect people who are oppressed to respond to that oppression the way that you're comfortable with. No. We the victims. We the victims. If somebody want to burn some shit up, well, you push that person to the point of burning some shit up. And when it comes to the idea of destruction of property and buildings, when it comes to Black life and buildings, I care about Black life. Right? I don't care about that building. that shit can be replaced. You ain't got insurance? Like, no, the building can come back. And I don't like, I do understand why it's a talking point, because it puts the blame on the people that are oppressed. That's why it's a talking point. Anytime people want to deflect from addressing an issue, they'll put blame on you. It's the same thing they do in terms of sexual assault. It's the same thing they do when you complain about racism. It is the same thing. And it is something that's done to Black women so much. I can't tell you, I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure any Black woman watching this, or however you identify, it was watching this, and you can think of a moment where you said something and somebody said, "Really? I don't think it's like that. Are you sure?" How many times has somebody said that to you? You know? And having your concerns about a situation gaslit, them having you thinking you losing your mind, you made this up, it was just a joke, you too loud, stop being so aggressive. I get that a lot. You too loud, you too aggressive. I get that a lot. And why your face look like that? Because this is my face, and situations like I saw commonality in Black women. And that's why I started the series of portraits of Black women called The Invisible Black Woman, because I know when I look at another Black woman, you can tell me situations where you were rendered invisible, voiceless. Every Black woman has that, in the tuck, multiple situations, and it's important to me as an artist to tell stories, and be that voice for people, the voice of the permanently silenced, and the voice of those that are rendered invisible. I'm a talker. That's what I have to do. I always have to do something. I always got to do, okay, just sit down. I always have to do something. And it's a heavy burden to carry, you feeling like you have to do something because ain't nobody else gonna do shit,
Absolutely. And let me just take a couple comments. We had Lonnie who said, Columbus looted a whole ass country.
That's right, Lonnie. That's right. That's my best friend. I love her. Lonnie and I work on. Did you want to say something, boo?
Yeah, we have Ron who said, first time watching. I enjoyed it. Actually kept my attention. Good topic. Have to watch next Tuesday. Nice job.
Hey.
Yes, thanks, Ron. We do have a question from G. Your art has been centered around these issues for years. Are you inspired to do any new work at this time?
Yeah. When we went on lockdown from the Rona, I decided, as inspiration hits me, I will create, right? And then when this happened, there's more of a dialogue about the type of work that I do. So I've been thinking about how do I push that further, right? I have been thinking about that. And I think one of the best ways for me to push it further and to explore new work is to incorporate other people into this dialogue, responding to what's happening, because there have been multiple situations where I've had to work on display and people didn't get it. And I have to explain it. Now I don't have to explain it. What's next? Let's push this further. What can you do to address what's happening,
Well, that leads me to another question because, I know you're a community advocate and there's different forms of advocacy. How do you explain what's community advocacy to you and like the artist's role in advocacy, protesting, being visible?
Yeah. So like our dear sister Nina Simone said, artists have a moral responsibility to reflect the times. And that's what I feel like my responsibility is as a visual artist. I can also acknowledge that not everybody's a visual artist, right? Activism has many different lanes, right? And You can use what you're good at to go down that lane, and then we're going to the same destination, you know, because I understand not everybody can march and protest, you know, that maybe you can write. Maybe you're into politics. Maybe you are a lawyer, you know, maybe you work in service. You have a voice. You are obligated to use it. And I think more responsibility is on visual artists now, because where are all these visual artists that are benefiting financially from Black Death? Where
Mm-hmm.
y'all at? Where you at? Open your, you know, your voice is needed. You know, talk
Mm-hmm.
about the content of your work as it relates to what's happening now. Where you at? You know, so I'm fortunate enough to have a group of artists that I rock with, and I've been rocking with for a long time, and we talk about these things, like what can we do in our different disciplines to be held, to hold ourselves accountable and be responsible to reflect what's happening now.
And I have a couple comments from YouTube. I have Path for Transformation. Thank you for your advocacy and holding accountability unapologetically.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
And I think that's, what I'm seeing is more Black people and people being unapologetic about it, because we have to, like, we can't scream because we're like the angry Black woman, or like, oh, here they go talking about slavery again. Here the whatever. But now it's just like, no, or there's people like, stop asking me, white people, how do you help? Go Google. You Google everything else. You figured out how to take over the country and all these things. You can figure out how to have a conversation with that racist uncle and that person who says, "I don't see color." All lives matter.
Just do what the police say. They won't do anything to you. Them people. Okay, how you like it? How you like it now? What happens when you comply? Just comply. Those people. They need to talk to one another. And I am a firm believer in accountability in every aspect of my life. It's something that I instill in my children. Did you tear up my room? You need to own up to it and fix my room. We gotta start the babies young. Be held accountable for what you did. Own it. Learn from it and grow. Own that shit. Own all the times that you laughed when somebody confided in you about something that happened to them. Own when somebody tried to talk about a victim of police brutality and you said, oh, but they were a criminal. Own that shit, because I don't care what somebody did. Somebody stole a car, is that a death sentence? Somebody crossing the street at the wrong spot, is that a death sentence? Somebody stealing some shit out of a store, is that a death sentence? Well, it's a death sentence for Black people, but it's not a death sentence for white people. When that boy, I don't even remember his name, but when he took those lives in Parkland, I was like, I know they finna light him up. I just knew it. And no, he was taken alive. And I can't think of a better reason to shoot somebody than the fact that they just shot up a high school. While he's still breathing,
And so we have a couple. Let's see, we have Santiago. Yeah. You inspire. Victoria laughing at you. Google everything else. And we have Sherry. We have Mark saying, "See me, art saves humanity, has recently recognized me as an expert metaphysician for the ongoing projects. I could add a very unusual perspective." Yeah, I think all perspectives are valid. Even we don't have to. I think you might agree with me. We don't need someone to have our same perspective. But you have to not dismiss my perspective and my actual facts and how I actually feel about something, or my actual fear of having an 11-year-old Black boy and I'm seeing a little kid get shot down because he has in 2 seconds because he has a toy gun.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then we could discuss those things,
Yeah, we can.
So we do have a question. We talked a little bit earlier about it, but Colette is asking, do you believe that police should be defunded?
Yes. Let me tell you something. If there's a police department, let me tell you, City of Miami, 2019 to 2020, their budget is $265 million, right? Can we take some of that money and put it somewhere else? We absolutely can. That's my take on defunded. Now, I talked a little earlier about people want to take it further and completely disband police departments. And I'm not on that side of the argument, right? I feel like we can take some of their resources and put it elsewhere. Because, and I was having a fight with somebody earlier about this idea. And this person works in a different realm of service, right? And so me saying funds should be taken away from police, this person heard, oh, take away all the materials that I need to do my job, and I'm just out here with nothing. No, you can have your little guns, you can have your uniforms, you can have your little cars, you can have, your little precincts and shit. But do y'all need tanks? Do you need them big ass trucks that come in and 15 of y'all get off and kick in somebody's door? Do you need this military gear? No, not when there are teachers in the city of Miami and Miami-Dade County that can't afford materials for their students. At my kids' school, every year the parents are asked to bring in supplies for the kids throughout the year. Why we can't take a few of them millions from the police and buy some books, some crayons, some scissors, everything that these babies need? Then we could take some of that money and put mental health workers in schools. We can put nurses in schools. When I was in junior high school, we had a nurse and a counselor, right? So if it's proven that having these resources in schools will deter students from maybe going down the wrong path, maybe coming and shooting up a school, then that's what we should do. We should invest in resources that are going to help us address what's happening. Why the police don't have this goddamn money? I mean, I rock with the police, but y'all don't need millions and billions of dollars. No.
And Santiago says less funds for the DEA task force, more funds for community police that engage in public in peace. Absolutely.
Exactly. And anybody who has experience with different type of police officers, the community resource officers are very different. Very different experience than it is when somebody pull you over. It's very different because their job is to engage and build relationships and support the community, and they're some of the nicest people I ever met, nicest people I ever met.
Yeah, we definitely need more support and community dialogue, because, there's a lot of healing. I mean, there's that's a whole nother topic, but
we a lot of these dialogues. Have these dialogues, and as a result of these dialogues, institutions of all different types need to commit to addressing the demands. Addressing the demands. Absolutely. There are institutions that got a whole bunch of black art on the wall. Ain't no black faces at the institution. Ain't no black faces coming in the door.
I was sharing with someone, and I know it's like that also within the art space. I read an article a few months back about tokenism in the nonprofit, because that's, for me, because I intersect with LGBT and being black. So, there's spaces where they want the diversity, but they just want the face. They don't want your contribution. They don't want your planning, or they want you to address other black people, not on the decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that, in nonprofit and, community work, as well as in these arts organization, things like that, where they're
Mm-hmm.
not, they say diversity and inclusion, but it's not actually that work and that voice, from diverse.
Right. You can't have me just in all the pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't want to hear what I have to say. No,
Absolutely.
that's how it works.
So, and G put a link to blacklivesmatter.com, defund the police, to kind of give more information about that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about Community Justice Project.
So, Community Justice Project had a call for applications. I think this was at the end of 2019. They were looking to start a new program that incorporates artists, right? Because this is a law firm, and these lawyers deal with immigration, sex trafficking, gun violence. They serve the community, lawyers that are with the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went through the whole process, and I was selected as the second resident artist for 2020. So right now there's a sister who's a resident. Her name is Desiree Jaha, and my residency starts in the fall. And I feel like this is a very important fusion of art as activism with, people who know the law and can provide resources to the people I interact with through my work. Because families who have loved ones that are lost to gun violence, they have to deal with police. They have to deal with lawyers. And a lot of them are intimidated. They don't want to even interact. They don't know their rights. They don't know that you can sue an apartment complex if your loved one dies there and the cameras weren't working. So I think having these two groups come together, motivated by the work that I create, is important to me, because I oftentimes find myself, reading over laws. I read Stand Your Ground so many times, and having to explain that to somebody who's grieving, and it permanently changes someone to lose somebody close to them. So having the opportunity to fuse these two areas of the community together by art is really important to me, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity.
That's an awesome opportunity. Congrats.
Thank you. Hey.
And you're also a mom, so not every artist is like, I'm an artist and a mom,
Yeah. I feel your pain. Feel it. I feel it. That adds another layer to the work that you have to do, because my kids are 7 and 9. I have a boy and a girl, and they are very aware of the work that I do. They are aware of the work that I do in the community, and we talk about it. So having to explain to my daughter, who sees me drawing a portrait of a child, she recognizes that this is a child, and her asking me, "Mommy, can I play with him?" And then me having to explain to her why she can't, and then that adds just that much more urgency to the work that I do, because, kids, they're going to ask you the questions. They're going to hold you accountable. They will size you up in a minute, So if I'm explaining to my babies what's happening, the first thing they're going to say is, "Mommy, what you going to do about that? What did you do, Mommy? You saw this happening," and that's what kids will do. And, I have a responsibility to them always. And then any child that I interact with, I have a responsibility to be for you what you need in this moment. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult. Like, part of my brain has to work on art. Part of my brain has to be mommy. Part of my brain has to deal with racism. Part of my brain has to try to stay sane. Like, we're pulled in all these different directions because we're responsible for people that are going to inherit this world,
And just as women artists, I know there's this video years ago. It says, "Who does she really think she is?" or something like that, where it talks about women and how come we could be, our breasts could be in MoMA, but us as women artists can't be in these spaces because we're expected to stay home and take care of the kids, and the man could have an art career. So that, it's just so many layers.
And then artist mothers are excluded from certain opportunities because you have this commitment to your child. You just go across the country and do a residency. You can't leave the country and do a residency because those resources are not in place for you as a mother, and then in the workplace, you still, let's say you are a professional artist, but you also have a job, and that job ain't flexible. Your kids got to be in school or daycare for you to go to work, and, there are all these other obstacles in place when you're a mama, an artist, and a Black lady,
Absolutely. I definitely have felt the impact of seeing some residencies, and I'm like, oh, because, that wouldn't work for me, because even if it's a little bit of money, it's not covering childcare. Am I flying with my son, or am I arranging for people to watch him when I'm here? And I used to do live art with him on my hip, painting with him on my hip, stop and nurse him, get back to my painting. I mean, I was committed, but it's an extreme challenge, It's that guilt, because some people feel like, oh, you're supposed to put everything into your kids. And there are some women like that, but there's some of us who's like, okay, I have children. I'm a mom. I'm a proud mom, but I also have this vision of art and how I could impact the world. So you have to, be grateful for our children to be able to be like, okay, mommy, I love you, whatever have you, but, be supportive of those things as well. So.
Right. So. The real talk. Whew. I feel you, girl. I feel you. And then, having to do the distance learning. And as an educator, I can educate a child, but it's very different when you have this stark shift in their everyday routine. So them having to adjust to that, you adjusting to it, and then trying to protect them from something that can make them sick. And then you still want them to get an education, girl.
Yeah.
That's over. I was so sick. I was so sick of it. Lord of mercy.
Lonnie said there are more opportunities for residencies that offer an option for artists with children. That's awesome. Definitely send some my way, and I'll share them as well. And then we have Mark saying 1979 to 2019, our institutions were charged with eliminating the recognition of Black genius in paintings. And that is Romare Bearden. Well, the charge is there, but then
they still, they're gonna put somebody else work up, There's always profit to be made off of Black art. It's always benefiting people that don't create it.
How do you navigate when something is an opportunity, or to be visible, or is exploitation as an artist, as a Black artist, as a woman artist?
That's a really good question. I am very particular about who I engage with or work on a project with. It's one of the reasons why I love you so much, because collaborating with you was one of the best experiences I've ever had as an artist, straight up. And I hype you up all the time. So I try to really hold on to those good experiences. And the art world in a variety of cities is very small. When somebody you don't know approaches you about something, you're gonna call your friends and be like, who is this person? You know them? What's your experience with them? And we're doing more of that now. More institutions and galleries and people should be added to the list of don't mess with that person. They trying to exploit you, rob you, embarrass you. because what we have to do is talk about these experiences, and I think I make it very clear when I display my work that this is a labor of love. I care about this body of work, anything I create, and you're not going to take advantage of this, right? Because these are real people, real lives, real stories. So I'm very protective of the work that I create.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been putting some links to Shire. One of the main ways, easier way to get to her, Instagram.com/VantaBlack305. It's going across the screen with the ticker.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check out some of the links to see more of her work and how to get in touch with her.
Mm-hmm.
We have Mark J. Dellinger, director of Bob Rauschenberg Gallery, has reopened Enlightenment on 1/16/2020. Okay.
Mm.
Gotta check out. Oh,
Yes, Nikki,
yeah,
call for artists. Yes, yes.
there is a call for artists. So, yeah, well, let me take a couple minutes to share about that. Thank you.
Yes.
Uh, Gee, let me see if I could pull that up. So there is an Aya Arts project that I'm working with the Housing Authority, and Shire is going to be one of the artists on that. So there's a call for artists. There's an affordable housing being built for the senior community in downtown Fort Lauderdale. So we're looking for art. There is going to be an honorarium compensation. We are going to be we got a filmmaker, Kat Dean, that's going to be creating a documentary about the art in the project and all the artists that's involved with it. So that is open now. So I'm just going to throw that link out there. And also, Artists for Black Lives Matter. We're
Hey.
now part of the collective. Have work submitted in there.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. So, Artists for Black Lives Matter, of course, is centered around Black lives that have been lost due to unjust reason, as well as other groups of people whose life is lost due to unjust reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
wanted to create something specifically because, like, with the coronavirus and also the problem with America, that the Black and Brown communities are being impacted at a higher rate.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, let's do a call specifically for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then with all this, the uprising that's coming up, all the deaths,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's still the same thing. So it's kind of one and the same.
Uh-huh.
However, we do have a call to artists. I'm going to post that link in the comments. And the submissions, we do 12 by 12. It is going to be, for the most part right now, a virtual exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you could submit art, and we have probably about 150 panels so far from artists locally, nationally. I
Wow.
mean, we had someone ship something from Switzerland one time. We were like, oh, wow.
Wow.
So, definitely, if you want more information or to submit your work to be a part of that, that's there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, well, before we wrap up, what if you had access to a time machine, where would you go, past or the future, and why?
Girl. Now, maybe 2 months ago, my answer would have been different. I would go to the past, but currently, I'm going to the future. I need to see the end of the reckoning. I need to see the results of the reckoning. I need to see what the world looks like when people acknowledge racism and commit to dismantling systemic racism. I
Mm,
need to see what that looks like on the other side. I
mm,
really do. Because we know right there, we know about that. But I wanna go to the future. Mm-hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. That's a great answer.
Thank
Well,
you.
Shire, this has been amazing. I think we both knew it was going to go over that.
Girl, just be.
Oh man. So from Art Service saying great chat. Thanks, ladies. Yes,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Sophie.
Again, Shire has quite a lot of work, in
Yes.
reference to Black Lives Matter, in reference to um, women who's lost life due to, you know, domestic violence, people who lost their life due to police brutality. And you also work, well, like, we're wrapping up, but you also work at the PAM, the Perez, uh, doing work there. So just lots of work in the community. Congrats again for your the Community Justice Project work.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Someone said, I want to see that future too. Absolutely.
Yes,
So,
Colette. Yes.
is there any final words before we wrap up?
Yes. This has been a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to share this platform with you. I'm honored. Um, if someone is out there and they don't know what to do, talk to your friends. Educate yourself, talk to your friends, and commit to changing other minds or having a dialogue with other people about what you learn. You know, reflect on how you've perpetuated racism. Reflect on that. Ain't nothing wrong with reflecting, you know. And if you reach out to your Black friends, be very careful, because this is very taxing on our spirits, on our bodies. We don't want to talk. We don't want to talk endlessly about Black death. We don't want to do that. We don't want to relive this trauma. We want to know what y'all gonna do to help us go past this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks again, VantaBlack,
Thank
Chire, for
you.
being here with us. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for all who is on the live right now. We're on Facebook, on Outclick Magazine, as well as Niki Lopez Creative. And I saw a few people on the YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. We're also on Periscope. For those who's going to watch it on the replay, you know, an advance thank you. If you have questions, comment, leave it in the chat, in the comment section, because we will go back to that.
Yes.
And so always a pleasure to catch up with you and see what you got going on. And the work
Likewise, sis.
you
I
do.
love you. I
I
love
love you too. I love you too.
you. All right, boo.
So I will see you all next week, and thank you for being here. Good night.
Good night.